If you went to high school at the tail end of the 1990s, Limp Bizkit were absolutely unavoidable. From people singing the lyrics to Nookie to flashing their copy of Significant Other, maybe mentioning the Faith cover that was on $3 bill, y'all, flashing a red New York Yankees hat, whether it be forwards or backwards, Fred Durst and these guys were somewhat of cultural icons. If you think Bieber fans were bad, well, they still are, but Limp Bizkit fans certainly could give them a run for their money. And that's because at that time, along with bands such as Korn, Disturbed, and Slipknot, this was a huge movement nu metal was, and Limp Bizkit was a part of it. However, the fan base has certainly waned in numbers in recent memory. However, there's still a lot of fans out there that love this music, whether for nostalgic purposes or otherwise. However, there's a ton of people that have hated this band since the start and still hate this band. We're going to find out some of those reasons why. And remember, this is all literally about the he said, she said bullshit. Doesn't necessarily reflect my own personal views. Here are 5 reasons why people hate Limp Bizkit. We're going to start off with number 5. I'm going to take off that hat because it's really, really freaking hot and obnoxious. Almost as obnoxious as these sunglasses, but it's kind of my thing. Number 5 is that nu metal and everything felt a little bit too commercial with it. Whenever nu metal came out, Limp Bizkit was at the forefront along with groups such as, the aforementioned Slipknot, Linkin Park, etc. And this was a movement that was seen by a lot of traditional heavy metal fans that were still riding the banner of groups such as Pantera, Metallica, Megadeth, really hoping for that next savior to come. They deemed it as way too commercial, and that intermixing with hip-hop was one that was a little bit more on display within these songs as opposed to some of the other groups that have attempted in the past. One of the groups that come to mind for me is Stuck Mojo, but a lot of folks will also cite Anthrax doing work with Public Enemy. Either which way, this commercialized image of heavy metal or nu metal or this sort of meeting of the minds between hip-hop and heavy metal was something that some were very willing to be very open-armed to. However, others were not willing to take the leap. And because of that, groups such as Limp Bizkit that really embraced that idea really were not on board. They distanced themselves from this band from the start, and really any of the fans that they had as friends probably weren't friends for very long. Number 4, Everything After Chocolate Starfish and the Hot Dog Flavored Water. Now, Chocolate Starfish is kind of an album that divides some people with this band, myself included. Yeah, there's an FYI, at one point I was a Limp Bizkit fan. I owned a copy of Significant Other, and one of my buddies had a copy of Chocolate Starfish. I remember listening to that album and thinking, what the fuck was that? This is definitely nowhere close to as good as Significant Other. In fact, this is an album that's just bona fide crap. It really does resemble a Chocolate Starfish. It's ass. And based around that was whenever my fandom of the band kind of went downhill. Subsequent releases didn't appeal to me as much as I had, really replaced Limp Bizkit and other nu metal bands with other groups simply based around my being more impressed by them or growing up, whatever the reason may be. But really, you have to admit, even as a fan, that the stuff after Chocolate Starfish just didn't feel like it has as much relevance to it, which can at times be sort of a shame, considering they have some, glistens of fairly decent material on those albums. It's to the point where you can almost not even remember some of the album titles. I think one of them was Subject to Change, which sounds like Limp Bizkit's whole entire career culminated into one freaking phrase. Either which way, this is really the point where the band started to experience its grand downturn, and even though they would have, moments here and there where they would sort of bump back up in the popularity cloud, they were very short-lived and didn't last. Nothing seemed to really emanate the real hype and hysteria of the initial couple of albums. And based around this, a lot of fans did distance themselves from the band, and a lot of fans actually took it one step further and said they hated the band because they felt like they had changed their sound. Number 3, the music itself. Now, you could say that this coincides with number 4, but there are those that felt that the music was overly simplistic. And this is dissimilar to number 5 in the fact that these aren't metal fans. These are just casual fans. Either that or people that looked at Limp Bizkit and really felt them to be the red-haired stepchild of the nu metal movement. There are a lot of fans that loved Slipknot, that loved Linkin Park, that really enjoyed other groups in this department, such as Disturbed and Godsmack, Flaw, whatever it may be. However, Limp Bizkit didn't apply to them, because whenever they listened to it, it didn't have that same feeling. It didn't resonate the same way with them, and based around that, they sort of became a little bit of a punching bag. The music itself has also taken on a lot of flack in the most recent memory, considering this is around the time whenever nostalgia has started to take over for a bit. And while some are willing to defend Limp Bizkit to the very end, There are more people than ever on board the whole train that this was a dark period of music, and Limp Bizkit was almost like a Nickelback before Nickelback. Either that, or that they just didn't exactly have the best motives in mind. There are those that are in a new generation that listen to the stuff that my generation enjoyed whenever they were 14 and kind of laughs at it. It's that whole thing where, the generation gap certainly kind of kicks you in the dick every once in a while. And based off of the music itself, a lot of folks have never gotten on board the camp and have actually taken to the other side, campaigning against Limp Bizkit, hoping that they fail. It's amazing what a couple of years can do, considering I was once a fan, and then was kind of hoping that they would fall into obscurity. And well, it's kind of happened. Am I happy? Not necessarily. Stampede of the Disco Elephants would be kind of funny just to have, just to listen to it, if it ever would come out. Come on, Fred, stop smoking up with Lil Wayne, if you're even with Cash Money anymore. I don't even know. I don't follow this shit. Young Money, not Cash Money. It's not Birdman. It's Lil Wayne. I can't say that word. Number 2, how the fans took the music. Now, once again, we're kind of going back to the music itself. However, this is the fan base and their response to it. And this was something chronicled by the band itself and also experienced by many of those who were either non-fans or fans of the band that saw what their fellow fan was doing. That's a lot of fans. Holy shit, there's a sale on fans, are we in IKEA? This is crazy. But at any rate, whenever fans took to this music, it was definitely meant to have a little bit of a machismo behind it. That's exactly how Fred Durst sort of comes off as with a lot of these songs, as a sort of tough guy that's on the up and up in the situation. And almost as though Fred is trying to play the underdog and showcase to a bully or somebody who dislikes him very much that he's got a lot of moxie, that he's got a lot of pep, that he should not be taken lightly. Instead, he's the one that's going to be screwing you up, beating you up, and beating you down. Get up, get down, jump around. This is definitely something that caused a lot of folks within that era, of high school and things like that, to sort of take to a little bit of combativeness, to take to a little bit of defending themselves. Their attitude definitely shifted, and the way in which they sort of, dressed and the generalized appeal took on a grand amount of real flack being thrown in their direction. It was certainly something that was heavily criticized. There are terms that have really been thrown out because of a band such as Limp Bizkit, and one of those is wigger. Yeah, it's not the one that I didn't say because of, Young Money and Lil Wayne. It's the one with the W. The one where essentially, thanks to bands such as Limp Bizkit and white people listening to rap music, there's a whole culture that was evolved based off of this, based off of how they were dressing, with baggy jeans and really loose-fitting clothing, wearing their hats backwards and trying to speak within slang. Either which way, Limp Bizkit was a part of this movement, and this irritated countless numbers of folks, wondered why it happened, realized it was because of Limp Bizkit and rap music, and some distanced themselves from both. But most distanced themselves from Limp Bizkit, considering they just looked like white bread. It was insane. Number 1, Fred Durst's reputation. This is the one that is almost obvious from the start. Fred Durst himself has been one of the biggest reasons why folks have really walked away from his band, just like Fred Durst was one of the biggest reasons why people walked on board to begin with. The first time I ever heard Fred Durst was on $3 Bill, y'all, with Limp Bizkit, and I liked the intensity that he was able to showcase. I thought that it really had something for the time. I was also about, 12 or 13, so shut up. Either which way, this was a guy who really seemed to have it all, but he constantly seemed to have his reputation stemmed in taking offense to every little thing that occurred, and this was especially true whenever Limp Bizkit was on their downturn from fame. He would curse out fans, either that or large crowds, whenever they weren't giving him the response that was desired. At one point, it was reported that he was booed off stage and he contemplated suicide in his dressing room, but instead wrote a song about it, which you would think would be proactive, but most people take that as some sort of emo display of ridiculosity. And then, whenever you get into the point where Fred Durst is talking about the music business, whenever Fred Durst is talking about his own band, and whenever Fred Durst is talking about his own fans, he comes off as egomaniacal. He comes off as a really big asshole, and that there's really no bone in his body that really seems to have any shred of humility. These are all rumors, these are all what people say, but either which way, it's certainly driven a lot of people away, and they did so in large numbers. Again, with the downturn of the band's popularity, many folks migrated and went to other groups. They were able to find other bands to really satisfy their urge. Five Finger Death Punch, I think, definitely benefited a good bit from the demise of Limp Bizkit, but that's just a personal opinion. Shinedown probably did also, but for a much different way. But at any rate, Fred Durst's personality really clashed with a lot of those that felt like they could maybe get into the band and wanted to learn about the members a little bit more. It's a shame that Fred seems to be the center point of attention, considering some of the other members of Limp Bizkit are fairly decent musicians. DJ Lethal as a spinster was pretty damn good, and Wes Borland, well, he was the talent in the band. Well, at least to some. Either way, Fred definitely has been sort of the live and die factor whenever it comes to Limp Bizkit, and based around that, they were able to gain scours upon scours of fans, but then also just simply bleed them out. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen, 5 reasons why people hate Limp Bizkit. If you think something was left out, leave it in the comments below. What's the next band that should be roasted, toasted, burnt to a crisp, and have some dude pop out in the corner of the screen and go, "Toasty!" That's a 90s reference to you, mothers. I also want to thank a lot of people out there, considering this is a celebration for 2,000 videos here on the Cover Killer Nation account. If you're a new subscriber, you have a lot of content that you can dig through. There's almost 40 alone in this series by itself. So thanks again for standing by for all of this time and all of these videos and being a part of this. I really do appreciate it. And once again, I'll talk to you all next time. Take care.